as community organizers, what are some of the things you're doing that you want people to know about? Just because I want to use this as like a springboard opportunity to be like, well, given how terrible all this stuff is, we can't trust anyone. No one's going to save us. So what are the things that people are doing?
Yeah, I know that Emmanuel and the Black Lives Matter have had great success, and I'll let him explain that. But I'm very proud of the movements that have come out of our feelings towards Pete and what he did to our city. So I feel like we're coming out fighting, and I hope that inspires the rest of the nation. But as for us, like a lot of cities, we were left with tent cities. When our winter amnesty closed in April, none of our homeless shelters were intaking because of COVID. So tent cities started to develop. And of course, our new mayor, who's Pete's best friend, eventually sent 70 police officers to sweep the city, or tent city. So a lot of work has gone into this. We finally have a commitment of about $1 million to put the homeless in motels. And we're doing that with fantastic success. But I will say that Pete Buttigieg failed to do the very obvious things to help our homeless, which is to put a low barrier intake shelter in our city. All the shelters here are high barrier. They have nowhere to go. He failed to hire a homeless czar for the mayor's administration to coordinate all the different services. So, I mean, he failed on every single front, and now we're paying the cost and we're fighting back.
Can you just explain high barrier versus low barrier?
Yes, the two shelters we have here are both clean and sober. So the big homeless shelter that Regis Philbin would, do his Christmas special for Notre Dame, you have to pass a drug test and a breathalyzer at any given moment. And we're serving 120 people now in motels, and probably 5 of those could go to that center. None of those shelters helped us when we were in tent city, not with masks, not with hand sanitizer. In the middle of a pandemic, we weren't even allowed to have a porta potty. I mean, Pete left the city with very little empathy for the most vulnerable. So we've had to do a lot of work in creating community empathy for those of us who are struggling. And the pandemic is really highlighting that it could be any of us. I mean, we're all one check or minus one stimulus check away from being on the streets. So a lot of involvement in trying to get the community to care and participate.
With the pandemic, it's kind of like an opportunity to understand how interconnected we are, given that it is a communicable virus. Emmanuel and Anthony, anything that you want to make sure people know about?
So Black Lives Matter South Bend, we have a bunch of stuff going on. We just had a big win a couple months ago when the Civilian Review Board with subpoena power was passed through our Common Council. And the subpoena power is incredibly important because it allows the procurement of documents. It allows people to come in and testify as well. So that's been elusive for a lot of communities that have been trying to establish a civilian review board, and we were able to get that in South Bend with some wonderful help from our council members. Black Xmas is going on right now. This is the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation initiative by Black for Christmas. So trying to support Black businesses. We have a couple videos about local Black businesses that are happening too. So you can check them out on our YouTube page and our Instagram. We do felony expungements. So we have a form that you can fill out, and for folks that just want to get their life back together. They either had a low-level drug offense that was way long ago. They can get their life back together, and the Indiana state code allows for that. And even in a Republican-controlled supermajority, we have laws that are there to help enfranchise people, and we want to make sure that the citizens know that here locally, and we do the surrounding area as well. Black and white, the real color that matters in a lot of these conversations is green. So we're trying to get minority contractors that are more than just Mayor Pete's friends. If you read a CNBC article that just came out, some of his donors were also folks that secured contracts within the city of South Bend that just broke earlier today. And so we're really pushing to get minority contractors out there. Yeah, and then we're continually working on our use of force policies. So Black Lives Matter is very much a political organization. And so we're going to push policy as much as possible, but at the same time, trying to lift up Black folks who have been continually disenfranchised. And we also have a good lead program that one of our members is working on too. Which is about lead poisoning or? Yeah, so it was about the, as Aberkel talked about, the 1,000 Houses in 1,000 Days initiative. At South Bend's lead levels are 6 times higher than Flint, Michigan, but you would never hear about that. And it's not because of the pipes, it's because of the lead paints. And when you demolish 800 houses, that dust gets in the air, and guess what? It poisons kids. Mayor Pete could have solved that. He could have taken the advice from the folks that were doing the demolishing and sprayed that down, but he decided not to do that. And now we have to deal with another public health crisis. So there's a lot of activism within the city, getting kids tested, getting people tested, making sure that people understand that what is actually happening to that is physiologically happening to the body when there is lead poisoning, and trying to get people treatment for that.
Again, it's awesome listening to what everyone's doing. And, you know, I can't help but think in my mind, we shouldn't have to do this. You know, this type of work shouldn't have to fall on the people of the communities that struggle the most to push for change. But one thing I thought was interesting that I want to mention was, you know, think about who was being considered for this position before, you know, Mayor Pete. It was Rahm Emanuel. So you see a lot of commonalities that exist in Chicago. So, you know, someone who covered up, you know, the murder of Laquan McDonald, someone who also, you know, waged war on our homeless population, you know, our 10 cities, so on and so forth, someone who closed down mental health facilities, pushed for the privatization of our educational systems. So we could go on. And, you know, for me, I just think it's important to further educate or attempt to collaborate and educate our communities, because I think low voter education not only benefits the Republican Party, but also benefits the Democratic establishment. They count on low voter education. They count on low voter turnout. And Joe Biden, as someone who lied about his role in the civil rights movement, lied about visiting Nelson Mandela in prison, so on and so forth, I think the commodification of Black bodies has never ended since the end of enslavement of Black individuals in 1865. It continues. You know, we're counted on for votes. But other than that, we're simply bodies. Joe Biden tried to push through Rahm. You know, Chicago spoke up. We spoke out. We raised hell. Shout out to Alderwoman Rosanna Rodriguez. You know, for Rosanna Rodriguez for putting out a petition. You know, to say no Rahm. But now we have Pete, you know, who's somewhat similar in a sense, just at a smaller scale based upon South Bend in comparison to Chicago.
Because he's younger, he hasn't had time to rack up all the terrible
Exactly. But he's still in that same vein. So a lot of the work that I'm trying to do now, one, you know, I'm running for a trustee position locally to try to push for change. We're trying to work on educating the communities to understand that, you know, better is not good enough. You know, Trump is mask off, Biden is essentially mask on. They're two sides of the same coin. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of their decision-making processes. You know, just recently, our current mayor, Lori Lightfoot, just came out that she tried to cover up a video. You know, a social worker, Anjanette Young, her house was raided. She was made to stand naked for, a long period of time while police were just raiding her house. They had the wrong home. They tried to cover this video up. So that was just uncovered. The mayor lied about it. So there's just a lot of work going on right now, particularly with our Democratic Socialist alderpersons that are taking the lead. So again, educating, you know, working with our homeless population. I personally put out a small business grant. We've raised close to $7,000 right now because, of course, we know the CARE Act, not enough money's coming to our small businesses. Meanwhile, Tom Brady, Kanye West, they're getting millions of dollars for their businesses. So we're trying to issue micro grants to businesses to help them through this pandemic and beyond. So again, you know, everything, struggles universal, similar things that are going on in South Bend, similar things that are being fought for in South Bend, we're fighting for in Chicago. But I just think those commonalities that overlap between our communities further highlights the fact that, you know, Black individuals are commodified. Our voices don't really matter. They just want our vote. And then after they get our vote, pay attention to Joe Biden with his recent conversation, audio recorded conversation with civil rights activists. I mean, look how he spoke to them. You know, it was a level of disdain. Like, how dare you ask for more?
Added on top of that Biden leaked tape was the response to that, which was either silence or people like covering up for him and making excuses, which was absurd. I mean, anyway, everyone should listen to that tape and keep an ear out for when he when Biden says that a real sign of progress is that there 3 to 4 out of 7 commercials are biracial commercials. That's what gives him a lot of optimism, which was.
I mean, they weaponize identity. I think we know that. I mean, Pete, again, shout out to the LGBTQIA plus community. I love everyone, fight for everyone. But my great grandma Lily G always said, not all skin folk are kinfolk. So just because someone represents a certain identity does not mean they're empowering the larger demographic. And I think that's what we see with, Pete Buttigieg and other individuals that Biden is appointing. He's looking for identity, but he's not looking for true substance and policy to push for change.
Right. Like Lori Lightfoot, who is a Black woman and as, complicit, as you just said in that cover. So we can't be fooled by that. Representation is important, but you can't do that instead of policy that actually helps the very people from those communities disproportionately.
That's what we're dealing with across this country. So I think that educational component is extremely important, not just focus on the general election, but let's focus on these primaries. Because primaries are oftentimes where you could truly get that transformative change within your community and beyond.
One last question from the audience is Alex Darwich says, how does having the university in South Bend help or hurt your efforts?
I just wanted to say that I did see that question, and thanks for asking it, Alex. The university, much like Pete did to our downtown area, is gentrifying that entire area. I mean, it's just eating up that side of town. It's ridiculous, and it's increasing again the cost of housing. But I did want to mention, just like we talked about the Civilian Review Board fighting to get some citizens involved in overseeing our taxpayers and the institutions here, is the same with our South Bend HUD authority, which the Mayor Pete had appointed all those people on the board. And now we're seeing a low-income housing building so dilapidated that they have to close it, and they're kicking out 100 people that are disabled, low income, and elderly. And they just sprung that on us. But people need to look at the power structures and where they have a hold, because they're kind of getting rid of all our public housing around Notre Dame. And this is just an example of leaving something so neglected that it just has to be torn down and everyone has to go find other places to live. Well, we can't even have, if you have a HUD voucher, good luck finding a landlord that will accept it. So we have to just really infiltrate our local governments and get involved.
Well, thank you all so much for coming on. I will link to I already did link to your Twitters in the description. I'm also going to link to your organizations. This is great. Really great. Bye, everyone. Thank you again so much.